Welcome to the Claws YouTube channel.
Together, we strive for a safer, secure, and more stable world.
Hello and welcome to Strategic Frontlines, the official YouTube channel of the Center for Land Warfare Studies. You're tuned into another episode of the Claws podcast series, where we unpack pressing issues of national security and defense strategy. Today, we begin with the deeply concerning development in South Asia's landscape. In an alarming escalation, Pakistan's ambassador to Russia, Mohammad Khalid Jamali, stated in a recent interview, and I quote, "We in Pakistan will use the full spectrum of power, both conventional and nuclear." Given the volatile history of both of the countries and the fact that this statement comes in the light of the recent and horrific Pahalgam terror attacks on April 22nd, which cost the lives of civilians, it's shocking, and it requires conversation, and it requires us to break down the rhetorics and go beyond what just meets the eye, right? To help us break this down, we are honored to be joined today by Dr. Roshan Khanijo, Director of Projects and Events at the Center for Land Warfare Studies. A renowned expert on nuclear strategy and niche defense technologies, Dr. Khanijo has an extensive career in the strategic community, including her previous tenure at the United Services Institute. She has delivered lectures on nuclear and strategic issues at premier defense institutions across the country, including the Army War College in Mau, Naval War College, Southern Naval Command in Kochi, Air War College in Hyderabad, and has served as a panelist on new generation warfare at RTRAC. Internationally as well, Dr. Khanijo has represented India at prestigious forums like IISS London, SIPRI Sweden, Beijing, and South Korea. She is also a published author and editor of significant works such as Complexities and Challenges of Nuclear India and China's Military Modernization. Her expert commentary frequently features in both national and international publications. Welcome to the podcast, ma'am. With this, we are all set to begin. Let's unpack the ambassador's statement to begin with. The use of the term full spectrum of power has obviously raised bells in India and globally. The ambassador is the first person, arguably the first official, to make such an explicit reference to a nuclear war. Ma'am, in your opinion, do you think this nuclear brinkmanship is a genuine strategic threat, or is it a nuclear bluff from Pakistan's side?
Thank you, Akashika, firstly, for inviting me here in this very current topic which you have mentioned. But before I start, I would like to pay my condolences to the bereaved family. In fact, the entire nation is with them. And not only the nation, but globally, this dastardly act has been condemned, whether it is Asia, Africa, or Latin America. So our condolences are with the family. Now, coming to the main question, nuclear brinkmanship is not new. It has been happening in the past. And the thing what Pakistani ambassador has stated is not a very good thing to say from an ambassador's point of view. Why? I'll try to tell you. Let's go back to 1945, when the first bomb and the only bomb which was dropped on Hiroshima. And that was just a 15 kT bomb. And the damage it did, the entire Hiroshima was totally abolished. There were some 90,000 people who died. Now come back to 2025. There were only 2 bombs that time. Now we see how many bombs there are. How many nuclear weapons are there? And the 15 kT bomb, what was dropped, now we have the lethality much more. It is just double, 40 kT, and so on. So you just see what the nuclear weapon can do. The lethality, it will entirely wipe out the place where it is dropped. So talking about nuclear weapons in such a way is not a very responsible comment to make. And considering, you see, geographically also, India is 4 times that of Pakistan. I don't want to go into scenarios. But if this happens, what will be the condition? So any talk of nuclear weapon, I leave it on to you. Any sane person will talk about it, knowing fully the lethality, what it is going to do.
That makes a lot of sense, ma'am, actually, because I'm thinking we've seen in recent days that the statements coming from top brass in Pakistan, they fuel rhetoric more than anything else. It's more for the stage, it's more for the international forum, and as a point of deflection, if nothing else. So the statements are shocking, like I said, but that also brings us to Pakistan's nuclear posture as a whole. So we look at in terms of their first use policy or their tactical nuclear weapons policy. How do you foresee, like, whether they are going to use it? How potent are they with it? How does it look like today?
As far as Pakistan is concerned, they always say about the tactical nuclear weapons. Their first use policy that they have, it is towards India. Now, let me tell you about something about the tactical nuclear weapons. In India's nuclear doctrine, we have clearly mentioned we do not differentiate between a tactical or a strategic weapon. For us, any attack on our territory or our soldiers anywhere will be considered as a first attack, whether it is with tactical nuclear weapons or anywhere. And the retaliation to it will be grave. The damage will be unacceptable. So you can keep on talking about tactical nuclear weapons. For your sake, you can say that, we have this. But for us, for the adversary, we do not accept that. For us, a nuclear weapon is a nuclear weapon. And if used against us, you are going to pay the price. That is quite simple. That is as far as one line is concerned. But the tactical nuclear weapons is also going to create a problem for Pakistan themselves, because those weapons cannot be potent until it is given to the local commanders. Now, when you do that, you have a lot of problems you are creating for yourself, whether it is accidental use or its threat can be taken away, or in a fog of war, you don't know what is going to happen. Once it is used, you cannot control it. So you are creating problems for yourself. So this is one area where they should really think carefully. As far as India we are concerned, we have clearly mentioned that we are a nuclear responsible state. And for us, nuclear weapons are for deterrence purposes. But that does not mean that we will not retaliate if pushed in a corner. If it is being used against us, then we have a doctrine which states that we are going to use it.
Thank you, ma'am. Yet again, that makes a lot of sense. But actually, that brings me back to the conversation I was having with you just before recording. For India, whether it be it tactical or whether be it strategic, it makes no difference to us, because as soon as you harm even one soldier of ours, that's an attack on us, right? But for all of the students that join us in this community on YouTube and who follow us, just a brief, ma'am, like you were telling me earlier, the difference between tactical and strategic, just for the wider audience to understand what it is.
Akashika, the difference between the tactical and strategic nuclear weapons is, for example, in terms of targeting and ranges, tactical nuclear weapons are known as battlefield weapons. When you attack a troop, a tank, it's very localized, and hence it is a short range weapon. Whereas a strategic nuclear weapon is a long range weapon. When you want to target a city or an infrastructure, then you use the strategic nuclear weapon.
Thank you. This was very helpful. This is a tip, lesson for the day for me today, at least. But when we talk about their nuclear power, it's we can't have a conversation about this without getting their all-weather ally China into the equation and the conversation. Uh, just a brief as to what China's role is, because they've been very vocal, at least, about their support towards Pakistan, even in the light of the Pahalgam attacks. They've always been vocal. That's not a surprise, but especially in terms of the nuclear policy that that Pakistan now has. What is the China factor in this equation?
See, as far as the nuclear weapons are concerned, the Chinese support, it's been alleged, Pakistan would not have been able to have a nuclear weapon what they have if it was not for the Chinese. The Chinese technology, the uranium enrichment capabilities, all has been given to the Pakistanis. It has been alleged and it has some proofs. And whether it is M11 or whether you find the Nasser, you find the technologies are there in the Chinese which have been given to Pakistan. So there is a clear, what you call it, line which states that there is a cooperation between the two. And as far as there was also what you call it, news that the ring magnets, which are essential for the gas centrifuge processes, which are used in nuclear enrichment, were being supplied by the Chinese. There were cases which were seen. Now, Shaheen is their missile of Pakistan, is alleged to be based on M11. Babur, we know, has lineage towards DH-10, which was further reverse engineered, it is stated, from US Tomahawk missile. So in each and every missile, you find that there is a Chinese imprint in that. And on not only that, but other armaments are also being supplied by the Chinese. JF-17 is a classic example. And in every, whether it is land, naval, or air domain, the Chinese imprint is quite strong. And especially in the submarines, we know the Chinese are constructing submarines for the Pakistanis. So the imprint is quite clear.
Ma'am, regarding this imprint that you talk about, this is again for contextualization and just for clarity purposes. But this Chinese imprint, does it look more in terms of procurements and discussions and exchange of technology from China towards Pakistan as what has already happened, or should we foresee an active Chinese involvement in further escalating tensions? Is it something of the past or relatively still active?
See, as far as armament is concerned, I feel there will be a help to Pakistanis from the China. There's no doubt about it. Because their armament is based on the Chinese armament. So whatever it is, they will, whether it is spare parts or anything, it will continue. And it has already started. We know that some missiles were given to Pakistan recently. So that angle will remain because they are too close-knit. And in the past it has happened, it continues now, and even in future it will continue. So we have no qualms about it that that angle is quite clear that maybe China may not actively support in terms of boots on ground when it comes to escalation levels. But as far as armaments is concerned, there are views that they might help.
All this makes me basically think is we have Pakistan on one side, we have China on the other, which makes us like a cocktail of the most brilliant neighbors, if I may. But that basically brings me to what are our nuclear capabilities? How is India standing as these tensions escalate?
Let me tell you, Akashika, as far India is concerned, we have got a potent nuclear weapon strategy as far as doctrine is there or force structure is there. so Pakistan should not have any, what you call it, they should not think twice before they come to the nuclear yaw tricks, because we are fully capable of retaliating. We have a potent triad. That means we not only have the land missiles, but also the air wing, the naval wing, all three wings. We have the nuclear weapons, which are capable of doing excessive damage to Pakistan from all three sides. So if we try to see, as far as I'm just saying, the nuclear aspect of it, we have a very potent nuclear weapon strategy, as well as missiles, what are required to dissuade our adversary from going into this brinkmanship. Because if they start, they will not know when to stop. Because nuclear war is one thing, it cannot be controlled. It's not like a conventional war. The fact that nuclear war has not taken place till now, even the Russians did not use nuclear weapons, though their red lines were also violated. Because it has something to it. You do not know, you'll be annihilated, basically. So talking about this is not a very responsible way of politics.
The ambassador, what this makes me think is that the ambassador should have taken into consideration that the words being said out loud are not just like that. The words being said have immense value behind them, and essentially, if it does come to a point of nuclear war, it's a lose-lose, because there would be a destruction.
Especially a person of his stature should think twice before you
Correct.
talk those ways, because you cannot talk about nuclear things in between. You cannot say that, because you
Which
know
is why it makes
what
me
your
question-
adversary can do to you,
Exactly.
knowing fully well what we can do to you. So it's not a very wise thing to say.
It's the basic principles of deterrence, one may argue.
Yes.
But because that's why this topic of today is also rhetoric is an important word for us. Is it a threat or is it a bluff? Because knowing all of this, knowing how deterrence works, knowing that it would potentially end up being a lose-lose situation with massive destruction on both ends, I don't think that was the wisest call from, like you said, a person of his stature. That's not something we would have expected. But this was brilliant contextualizing, and I'm so glad we are able to do this, because now the big question essentially is there space for retaliation? What does, if it does come to it, what does the road ahead look like for us, could potentially look like for us, if this were to become a reality?
See, the fact remains that you cannot do a terrorist attack and think that it will not be retaliated. That is not a right way to do it. You have to understand there is always a space to retaliate, whether it is kinetic, non-kinetic, there's always a space, because this kind of a behavior will not be tolerated, whether it is our Prime Minister, our Foreign Minister, or Defense Minister has clearly stated that terrorism is not going to be tolerated, and those who are behind it will be punished. So I'm sure they are thinking about it. We need to leave that to the strategists. Our army, we have, the strongest army, and as far as we are concerned, just to tell you, India is the 4th position in the Global Firework Index 2025. So we have a very strong army. We have a very strong navy. And the naval exercises are going on just 85 nautical miles off Pakistani, this thing. So we are doing naval exercises. Our Air Force is also ready. So all the military is having their own plans, and it will come. So give them the benefit when they want to do it, what they want to do it, and how they want to do it. But in this, the escalation dominance is with us. We know exactly what to do, when to do, and how to do it. Because this needs to be a lesson anywhere that terrorism will not be tolerated. It's a very dastardly act. Killing innocent people is not going to work. So I just want to say that we have to be responsible enough not to go into what you call it, hyperventilation, but be balanced. Have faith on our army, on the defense forces, on the government, and I'm sure at the right time, the right position will come out.
You're absolutely right, ma'am. Absolutely. Because 2019 Pulwama has significantly lowered down India's threshold for tolerating terrorism. And I think what I'm sure is coming next, what we're all sure is coming next, is going to be a big, big lesson, because that's not something that India sits down and tolerates. Not easy, not ever. So I think that's the lesson that
And
needs to go out.
and in the ladder, there are a lot of things what you can do. It's not any one. There are a lot of domains where you can work out.
Right.
The escalation ladder is very different, and I need not spell out everything, but there are a lot of things which can be done to hit the nail where it hurts.
Apart from militarily as well, we are already doing
Yeah, we have
diplomatic
already
escalations.
started taking actions. In this, water treaty was one of that,
Right.
which was long due, and we have said that it is in abeyance. Economically also, we can hurt where it matters.
Right.
So there are a lot of domains where we can work out. It's not that one particular domain we need to work. There are a lot of domains. So, and I'm sure the people are working, the concerned persons, they are working on it, and they are thinking how to do.
The Indus Water Treaty, which was considered untouchable in terms of it can't ever be suspended or held in abeyance, and this time that's how it's been triggered, and we've shown that you don't get away with something like this, and you don't take for granted a treaty that was based off of mutual principles. So as soon as that comes into test, I think it's testament to the fact that something uh, doesn't sit right and won't and shouldn't sit right, because 26 people we lost, and
Yes, it
that's
has to be the
not
message. The message has to
right.
go clear that terrorism is not acceptable.
Absolutely.
Killing of innocent people is not acceptable anywhere, in any country.
Absolutely.
And if this thing is happening, then the concerned people need to be told in no uncertain terms that yes, this is not right.
No.
And I'm sure we will do it.
That's the faith we have on our system. Absolutely, ma'am. With that, Dr. Roshan, thank you so much for your time. I just have one last question for you before we let you go. Nuclear saber rattling is a term I heard from you only, and that's what I'd love to talk about in as the last question here. What Pakistan seems to be doing, this rhetoric building, these words getting thrown around, saying that the full national power and the entire national power spectrum, that's the wrath that India will face, and so on and so forth. There's so many comments coming in from Pakistan top brass. How does that translate for Pakistan on the international and diplomatic level? What is there? How does their standing get affected? Does it get affected positively, negatively? How does it look like for them?
In conclusion, Akashika, I can say this nuclear saber rattling by Pakistan is in a very poor state, because a responsible nuclear weapon state will not do this. That shows their immaturity, and globally it will not be taken as a wise statement, because nuclear weapons are very dangerous and it will annihilate you. So talking about that is not going to help you, and you are unnecessarily creating problems for your country. You're trying to escalate the level. You think you're trying to, but it doesn't work like that. We know what we need to do, and whether you keep saying that we will do what we want, because after all, we know how to react, when to react. And internationally also, we have partners. Not few years back, Pakistan was in gray zone because of its support for the terrorist activities. Their leaders themselves have stated in the past their history of supporting terrorists and terrorism. So it's not in the past, but the strategy is continuing. So who are they who are doing? They should think, the civilian government should try to have that much control to control those people. And the extra-regional powers should put pressure not to perpetuate these problems. But we are very clear, as far as we are concerned, this nuclear saber rattling is not going to deter us. You have done a mistake by taking this path, and we will try to remove terrorism and especially the terrorists who are involved in this. That's my take.
Thank you, ma'am. Brilliant. I think, like you mentioned, the confessions keep on coming. Even with the Pakistani defense minister's recent confession almost on a Russian interview. I think you're absolutely right that the other person, the adversary, is struggling and scrambling, but we stand strong and resolute. I think that's kudos to everybody. That's kudos to the government and all the agencies involved. And I think this is a good time for us to call this podcast a success, in my opinion. And let's see, when we talk about Pakistan's growing rhetoric, I am 100% sure it's going to, hopefully utilize its permanent seat on the UNSC for the next year that it is there. But let's see how this rhetoric goes. But that's for sure that we stand strong in resolution. And heartfelt condolences yet again go to everybody who was affected, all families. And let this be a message to the world that we don't tolerate this at all. We don't stand for it, and we won't stand for it. Any last comments from you, ma'am? And then we are good to conclude.
It's not going to help. And we are going to do what we want to do. How we do it, when we do it, we leave it on to the experts who know what best is to be done. But rest assured, our Prime Minister, our Defense Minister have clearly mentioned and signaled those things. Thank you so much, Akashika, for having me today.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for joining, and look forward to many more such sessions soon. Thank you.